Hello, vinyl community. How are you? I'm Gary. This is Physical Format Rock and Roll. Thank you so much for tuning in. I wanted to do a review on a couple things. The first is a movie or documentary that is out right now on Netflix, and it's called Travelin' Band, Creedence Clearwater Revival at the Royal Albert Hall. Now, this is a documentary and a concert film. So the first, I don't know, 35 minutes, I think, is pretty much a documentary about CCR, and this would be their first trip over to Europe. They were touring over there for the first time. It was in 1970. This was after they had put out 3 albums in 1969. That's right, 3 studio albums, and not crap albums, not EPs, 3 full-length albums. Anyway, they were on top of the world. They got to tour Europe for the first time, and the documentary part of it, which is narrated by Jeff Bridges, shows a lot of really wonderful clips of the band over there. You get to hear them answer, like, a couple of questions here and there, and you just see the camaraderie between the band. And it's really great to see because, as we know, there ended up being a lot of bad blood in this band. At this point, it wasn't there, although I can't say that you can't see a few cracks or fractions in the band. Sometimes some of the body language speaks for itself, and when you watch this, you will see it. But it's great to be able to see Stu Cook on bass and Doug Clifford on drums, because I think this kind of shows you not only, the fun that they were having back then, along with Tom, but also that those two together were a pretty good rhythm section. And I think that gets overlooked sometimes when we talk about CCR because we focus so much on John Fogerty. Rightfully so. I mean, John Fogerty was the mastermind of that band, and I am in no shape or form saying that he wasn't. Right? He was the main songwriter, he was the singer, he was the lead guitar player. He pretty much had the idea of what he wanted to do. But those two guys right there, Doug and Stu, definitely give it a groove. They give CCR a good feel. Something that John hasn't always had necessarily on his solo albums. Now, I think he's made some terrific solo albums, some terrific songs, but I can't say that any of them were ever as good as what he did in CCR. And along those lines, a lot of that just has to do with that groove, with that feel that was in the band. Anyway, that's what's fantastic about this documentary and this concert film is you get to see the whole band. And they not only are they showing clips of them like playing in different cities in Europe, like just real quick clips that are just awesome to see, but you get to see them in the different towns and stuff. And then they talk about the origin of CCR, how they came together. I know a lot of us already know this story, but it's really cool to hear. And it's cool to hear in some of their words, they got together when they were kids and formed this band. Carried it on to become one of the biggest bands in the world. Now, the second part of this film is a concert film from the Royal Albert Hall. And it pretty much transfers seamlessly up to this. The documentary builds up to it. And the concert film itself is just wonderful to watch. It is a joy to get to see those guys play together, having fun on stage. You can definitely see Doug Clifford just follows John Fogerty so much when they're playing, and you can just see Stu is up there, he just looks like he's having a ball the whole time playing bass. And Doug Clifford is, in my mind, the way he watches John Fogerty, he wants to make John happy. I just really get that feeling. And he comes off as a, a pretty darn good drummer. You know, those guys were basic players in a way, but very good, and it's fun to watch them. Now, along with that film is this album that is currently out. And this is Creedence Clearwater Revival at the Royal Albert Hall, April 14th, 1970. And this is a pretty doggone good album. It's full of songs that you know. It's got a lot of the hits on the first side. Now, it's not a real long album, I will say that. Before I go any further, let me show you the vinyl real quick, because the vinyl itself is colored on Tombstone Shadow vinyl, which is what they're calling it there. I thought that's kind of funny. Of course, that song, Tombstone Shadow, does fall in there. There are a couple songs on here, the live versions, that I will say I prefer the studio versions, but it's always great to hear these done live. And where it really cooks for me, where I really like it, is on side 2. The last 3 songs, they do the nighttime is the right time, which of course is a remake. Ray Charles doing that song. They do a slamming job on that song. John Fogerty sounds so fantastic on that, and so does the whole band. Everybody shines on these songs. That one's great. They do another remake of Good Golly Miss Molly, which they just rock it. They rock the shit out of that song, man. If you like rock and roll, you will like that. And it's great to hear them do that song, because as you're listening to it, you're thinking, wow, that sounds like a CCR song. Because, you know, it just shows the influence that these early songs had on the band. And, you know, they transferred that into their own sound. And then they end it with Keep on Chuggling. And it is a great version of that. That song just rocks. It reminds me of like the first time, you know, the first few times you would heard it through the grapevine, the long version where they do all that jamming and stuff when you were young. This gives me the feel of that. Listening to it, it makes me smile. It's just great rock and roll. So if you're a fan of CCR or rock and roll in general, I definitely recommend watching that documentary on Netflix. It's wonderful. And if you're a CCR fan, I feel like you're going to want to own this album. It sounds great and it rocks. It's definitely a great memento to have from that time period. So I'm Gary. This is Physical Format Rock and Roll. Till the next time, my friends, I will see you down the road.